So my very first question is, where did you even start?
Well, I do a lot of TV pilots, the first episodes of shows, and I was doing one of them, and I needed some shots of police driving through New York City. And I went on the stock footage, and the website was really good. So I could be like, police cars driving left to right, police cars, and then I was like, wow, this is amazing. I was like, one day maybe I should see if I can make a film with just stock footage. And that sort of stuck in my craw as being an interesting idea. And I had a little bit of a script I was working on, sort of like a paranoid thriller. And I was like, oh, maybe I can use this to begin with. But it was a huge, I convinced one of the people who's invested in my movies to give us enough money for like 3 weeks of editing, just to see as proof of concept, could we pull it off? Even just for the first 5 minutes of the movie, could we make something compelling? And I just asked a bunch of my actor friends, not the voice cast you hear, but just friends, these are professional actors, but I asked my buddies who were, who to just record onto their phone, and I would write, and we would just start doing stuff. And I found that as I dug deeper into this stock footage, there was a lot of really interesting artists doing really interesting work. So I just started putting in the word abstract, like balloons abstract, whatever. And suddenly stuff kind of came up. I had, at a certain point, we had 3 interns and myself and the editor just on our laptops, and so I would write every day. I would just sit there and write, and we would cut and write, and we would cut and record with our friends on their iPhones. And then at a certain point, it started feeling like a movie. I didn't know, and I still don't even know if there's a commercial viability to the thing, but it was an interesting experiment, and I'm excited that you guys are able to see it today. And I'd love to hear how you guys thought of it. But it was definitely a situation where, most movies, you have a script, you shoot the script, and then you edit the movie. And here, this was, it wasn't even like a documentary where we even knew what the documentary was about. This was anything we wanted to do. So we took, there's whole sequences we did that didn't end up working out. And certain things like the sequence at the speakeasy with them singing took endless amounts of time trying to sync up the lips of the people who were singing. So it was just a lot of work.
Can I just say that I wanted to call out, thank you so much for using a little bit of the amazing film noir detour in that particular cabaret scene. Because when you were talking about you might recognize, I'm like, oh my God, yes, that's what that is. So you mentioned that there were some things that didn't work out. Did you find moments where you kind of were stuck in a corner and how did you work your way out of those moments?
Well, I'm a writer, so I would just work my way out of them. Sometimes I'd be off on a quest looking for footage, and I'd start finding some cool stuff. I wanted to have one of the trickiest things actually were the main characters, finding enough footage of those people. So the main girl Marie, she was in it wasn't labeled like this. She was an actress who was paid to be in these. You could buy that footage and do a commercial for toothpaste, But I found a few of them, and I'm like, oh my God, she's got something to her. But it wasn't like I could keep looking her up. So then I had to be like redhead girl, and start. And then I found the guy who made the video and started looking through his 30,000 shots. But eventually I was able to do that. And the same thing for the guy with the mask on his face, the minister, and all of these things. I couldn't just find one shot. I needed a few of them.
Right.
There were not a lot of Pakistani men for the lead guy, and Kumail, very early on, I had done a TV show with Kumail called Welcome to Chippendales.
So good.
And his wife, Emily, who's a writer and producer, and I asked them to come on board pretty early on. I showed them 10 minutes of it, and they love science fiction. They're huge science fiction and horror fans, and so they were into it. And so that helped, but of course I had to have a Pakistan, like now I couldn't suddenly have a white person be Kumail. So it was, there were a lot of challenges.
How long did this process take?
I mean, on and off for 2 years. I mean, we would gather whenever we weren't working for money, because this certainly just wasn't paying us, and we meet up again and do a little bit, and then go away and come back and go away.
Okay. One more question for me, and then I'll give it up to the audience. So yes, thank you for bringing up Welcome to Chippendales, which was such a great miniseries.
Thank you.
And I also, it calls out one thing about the cast that you chose, and that you've got people in here that have some really solid lead credits, but also pretty much all of them have done really solid character work as well. And so the fact that they are all kind of they have those similar qualities, that was something that you were looking for when you started thinking about casting, or was it more of reaching out to friends?
When you're putting a movie together and you have no money, it's tough. Because, even if the actor is like, oh, that sounds fun, their agents are like, why would you ever do something like that? You can make a lot of money. So I just sort of went through my phone book of actors I'd worked with. I had worked with every single person, other than Carrie Coon. I had worked with Evan Moss-Bachrach on Girls. I had worked with Sam Rockwell on an early movie I had done. I had worked with Murray Bartlett on Welcome to Chippendales. I'd worked with Kumail on Welcome to Chippendales. I had worked with Eugenio Debrez on the Apple show Acapulco, which I did the pilot for. So I basically just called in favors, and I'm like, how exciting for you. I'm gonna pay you nothing, and you're gonna get to be in my movie.
And we get to see it.
Exactly.
And at the world premiere.
Yeah.
Okay, so, do we have any questions?
The process, were you writing and then finding things that matched the writing, or were you sort of getting a core of stuff and then writing and then looking for more? Like, what was
It was a
that?
combination. I wrote a bunch of stuff, like the scene with the interrogator, with the Sam Rockwell scene where he's, interrogating him. That was completely written ahead of time. But a lot of scenes weren't. A lot of scenes were just, I'm interested in figuring out, I love this footage. I want to do like a really trippy car chase where the motorcycle's upside down. I need to get them into the situation and then get them out of it.
Nice. Yes.
When I heard you this described, my first thought was, how's it gonna deal with tone? And then it's like, you didn't, but somehow it works, right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, there were some laughs in the movie, and there's hopefully some drama in the movie, and I had this. I didn't know how it was going to end. I didn't know that he was in a coma. I didn't know where it was going. This is true, and I was like, oh my God, I'm running myself into like a horrible pickle here. Like, how am I going to get out of this? And then I was like, I took a plane from LA to New York, and on the plane I was like, oh no, he's in a coma. So, and then there was a lot of discussion about whether we should actually shoot the post-coma sequence with her at the hospital. But then I thought, no, I want to do the whole movie with the stock footage. But tone, hopefully it's just unlike anything you've seen. I mean, that was the idea. Like, you've never seen a movie with this many different locations and shots. It's insane, because we had the production value of everything, and we worked out a deal with Pond 5 where they basically gave us the footage.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was sort of loosely familiar with those guys, but yeah, the scale of this is probably way beyond anybody else ever doing.
My stepdaughter in college, her film class was like, make a movie out of stock footage, and she showed me this like 5-minute thing she did. I'm like, wow, that's exactly our film. You've done our film in film school.
But the running time of this is like.
This is 70 something minutes, yeah.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I was, actually had the same conversation with my DP last year. We were looking through stock footage. It was so amazing. I'm so happy that you did it. Because I also had a question of like, could it be done? And like, how would you do it? But I have like a technical question. And I'm sure it's fine and you did it, you know. But how did you deal with the different sizes of the files and then making it into like a final?
So because this footage, you know, there's Super 8, 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter, HD, 2K, 4K, there's every type of thing you can shoot and you can buy off this website is in the movie. And our computers, our Avid crash like 3 to 4 times a day. It just was like, what the fuck are you doing? It just shut off and like, you need to go out and get lunch. Like, because it just didn't know what to do. So we eventually, like, our assistant editors were great. And they sort of figured out workarounds and like, but it was very complicated. When we got into actually making doing the actual conform of everything, it all worked. It was all fine. Some of the stuff that was British, that was at 30 frames instead of 24 frames, that was a little difficult, and there's a few shots that stutter because of that. But, you know, I was willing to deal with it.
Yes.
I'm just gonna say, I'm really excited for you. I think
Thank you.
watching this and understanding your use of digital search and what you've been able to do is like thinking of the Renaissance art versus abstract impressionism or something. You've taken the possibilities for movie making into a whole different genre, and you're gonna have a lot of fun with that, I think, over time.
I mean, I thank you. And I think, you know, it's interesting, you know, there's a whole debate in Hollywood about AI and what's going to happen with our movies. And every shot here was hand-picked. So some of them are computer shots, but none of them were I hand-picked them because they were for sale on this website. Nothing was created for the movie. But if I had unlimited funds, I would make a second version of this movie with the same script, same voice, same music, and see what AI with that library, what shots they would pick.
Wow.
Because I went out of my way. I was looking at it from a filmmaking aesthetic, like which shots are really beautiful, how they cut together. It wasn't just, you know, give me a shot of a guy walking at night. It was like, let me find an interesting shot of a guy walking at night. So I'd like to think that this would be better than AI, but I have no idea.
Yes.
Okay, yes, and what about the choice of music and the word bacchanal?
The Bacchanal 3, you want a pill? Yeah. No, we all, exactly, it's Friday night, come on, we're in Boston, things are gonna happen.
Why not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What would you say is the emotional? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I think he's talking to his friend.
What would you say is the emotional core of this movie?
What would you say is the emotional core of this movie?
I liked the ending. Like, honestly, I was really blown away by this.
Right. Well, it's certainly not for everybody.
Yeah, I can see like the concept came first, and then the story just, I don't know.
Yeah.
But there is something in there for everybody, pretty much with all that footage.
I mean, you know, there's musical numbers, there's chase scenes, there's love scenes, there's, you know,
Yeah,
there's
but
every possible thing.
Everything in there reminded me of something better that I've seen.
Welcome to my life, my friend.
Why Polaroid, like a brand name like that,
It
specific?
just seems sort of fun. You know, it just seemed like, you know, it's such an old idea of like, you take a photograph and you can remember it forever. It just seemed like a fun.
I'm curious to know what filmmakers or film inspired you, because as I was watching this, I had so many different other films going through my head, and I'm not saying, you know, there were some just like, at one point I even looked away because I was jotting down a note, and I was like, this almost feels like those old school film noir radio plays.
Well, it is a radio play, really. I mean, you know, I mean, it's only, the idea that there's no, this was a real tough thing when we were editing, because we are used to looking into the eyes of the actors, you know?
Yeah.
And so to visualize it, but not really be able to see them was really tough. And so it is a radio play on some level, in that you know, it's all narration or dialogue, but you don't see them talking. But, you know, it's interesting, when you watch a regular movie, and there's a scene in a diner, and it starts with a wide shot, and you see the diner, and then you see the two actors, and it's a two shot, and then they have close up, close up, close up, close up. After a while, it's only about the eyes and what they're saying, and we didn't have that. And so that was a really tough thing, like how do we make people care at all if they can't really hold on to the characters?
Can I still have one sec? So actually, yeah, that is one of the really interesting things to me about this film. So there are certain class of filmmakers that leave gaps that they anticipate the viewer is going to fill in. But that is typically more from a thematic and narrative. I'm thinking like Robert Bresson would be a great example. But in this case, it's the visual. It's the audience and the viewer has to psychologically fill in. And it's interesting, I don't think that people will necessarily see this as much of a challenge because we are so much more visually oriented. And so kudos on that. Okay, and while I have this, I am going to ask two more questions. First one is, you mentioned that you are also working on or you've been working on a documentary project on the similar lines. Would you be comfortable talking about that?
So this actually one of the reasons I did this was that I made this movie, not this movie, but over COVID I made a very personal documentary about my film obsession as a kid and my very mysterious father. And I used clips from all the movies I saw when I was a kid, and then I repurposed the clips to talk about my father. And it was very interesting to see how I can tell a story using other people's footage, really. And so that also got me thinking. This documentary is called Film Geek, and it's going to be on PCM in April. And I hope you get a chance to see it. But so it was sort of like an inspiration of, oh, I can do this. Like, how cool is this? If 5 different shots can make it feel like one shot.
Yeah. Okay, and then my last question, I don't know if I got any more, but I initially watched this in the fall, and then watching it tonight, it hit a little bit different. Because, at least from my perspective, Charlie's dream world and our real world in this country have gotten a little bit closer. And I'm wondering if you've thought at all about this seeing the light of day at this moment.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because I haven't seen the movie in 2 months or whatever, and I was like, oh. Wow. It's kind of terrifying.
Yes, it is.
Any other questions?
Yes.
I had a quick question about the process of directing the actors once you brought them in. Did you have the scenes visually built out yet and then bring them in, or was it the opposite where you had?
By the time the actors came in, I brought a few of them in more than once. Like Kumail came in a few times, but all the other actors, it was all cut so they could see the footage. But like Sam Rockwell didn't want to see the footage. He just wanted to do it. So we had to fuck with the footage a little bit because of his pace and whatever. But he wanted to be able to give his performance on his timing. Other people wanted to have the reference, so it kind of went both ways. But more, sometimes we looked at it, and I would sometimes show it to them ahead of time so they kind of even knew what was going on. Because you can explain this movie over and over again until you see it. you're like, oh, that's what you mean when you're saying it's stock footage or whatever.
Just so along those lines, did you play with the rate of the films at all? I mean, you kind
We
of...
did some of those clips have been manipulated, some of them have been turned upside down, some of them have been sped up, some of them have been, we've added graphics to some of them, but all the footage is footage that we got from this, we didn't create any footage from nothing, but like any movie, there was some level of post-production.
How long did you say you had it?
Oh, on and off for 2 years, but not continuously, really on and off. Go on.
From a narrative point of view, okay, I can see that as a sci-fi, but it's so different, and the way you construct that at which point did you realize to yourself, okay, I'm doing this kind of genre or this kind of genre, this is a sci-fi, this is a romance.
I mean, it's many different genres.
Yeah.
It's a mystery. There's a lot of film noir clips in it. It is a love story. There's a science fiction element to it. It's a drama. It's kind of silly sometimes with the giraffe. So it is a lot of things, but that's okay. I mean, so much of the work that I do when I direct television is here's what you have to do, and do it. And then you within those parameters, you could be very creative, but at the end of the day,
You're in this parameter.
it's a business and they want what they want. So to make a film like this is really the opposite of that, which is like, I'm making this to see if I can do this and how fun this will be. It's been really enjoyable, and it's super fun to even share it tonight, to see it with people and to hear people have reactions to it. I mean, that's what we do it for. And ultimately, it didn't follow any rule book, other than there was title sequence and, and some credits at the end.
Silly question. Why the title is, was, will versus was, is, will?
Very good question. The title was the bane of our existence. I can show you pages upon pages of titles, some of which are better than this title. But this was a title that something about it just seemed interesting to me.
First of all, I have to say that this film just seemed like the essence of the purity of just abstractness or something, just like, oof. Are you gonna do another one?
I don't think I'll do another stock footage movie,
Yeah.
but my wife is a showrunner, and she was doing something, and they needed some shots, and I was like, I'm gonna find you some shots. You don't really need to go shoot anything. I'll find you some shots. Don't you worry.
I'm just curious if you happen to know offhand how many shots actually made it into the final cut.
I think it's somewhere between 1,300 and 1,500. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Did you, when you blow it up to this giant size of the screen from having got a smaller screen, did you see any changes or anything?
There's definitely stuff that I noticed tonight. I'm like, oh wow, that's interesting. But nothing gigantic, But certain shots, the definition wasn't so great. It looked a little bit, certain things that you wouldn't catch. I mean.
By the way, there's other films that look sort of janky on this projector or something, so it may not be your film.
Hey guys, I so appreciate you watching this tonight, and thank you very much.